The way you think, feel, and act today is shaping the life you're going to have tomorrow. Let's talk about it. Part 4 of how your personality creates your personal reality. In life, you don't get what you want. You get what you are vibrationally being. That means your state of thinking, your state of emotionally relating to the people and circumstances in your life, and your state of habits. What pattern have you been living? Because that pattern is going to give you a predictable outcome of a destiny that you probably might want to tweak. But it starts with breaking the habit of being yourself. It wasn't until I really got deep into learning how to meditate, and I don't mean the traditional sense of meditation, because I've done that before. I've sat there, I've done chants, I've tried to quiet the thoughts in my brain. I've done all the things that traditional meditation will teach you. But it was when I came into the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, who breaks down the science of what we are doing when we meditate, how we are changing our energy, changing the signals that we send to our brain, which changes the signals that we send throughout our bodies. I started understanding how I was shifting my energy, how I was doing it in a scientific way, and how that was actually impacting or affecting not just my brain waves, but also my organs in my body, and also my aura, the electromagnetic field that surrounds me and each and every one of us. Developing this practice really put me in the driver's seat of understanding that I had allowed myself to be conditioned in a particular way that wasn't serving me any longer. We all have. And if I was going to change anything about my life, I needed to change the way that I started to think about life, the way that I allowed myself to emotionally react to the people and circumstances in my life, and the way that I developed habits. And so I started breaking the habit of being myself by, number one, changing the information that I allowed to come into my mind. That includes subconscious reprogramming. I talk a lot about that in several of my other videos. Scroll down my page. It also required me to change how I emotionally relate to the people in my life, starting with the people that are closest to me. If you pay attention, you'll notice that we all have dynamics with different people in our lives. We are all showing up different with each and every person in our lives. Certain people will trigger certain things in you. Certain people you'll have more harmonious connections with. And others you might have disharmonious connections with. But the common denominator is you. And unless you change in the dynamic, things won't change. I'm going to repeat that. Unless you change in the dynamic, things won't change. It was only when I made the decision that I was no longer going to continue to show up the way I had been showing up with certain people in my life that things started to change for me. I stopped telling the old stories about who I thought those people were in my life or what I thought they thought of me. In fact, when I changed my stories about who I thought I was to them and who I thought they actually were, I started to notice something that was almost miraculous. They started to seemingly change. I wonder how that happened. It wasn't because they necessarily changed. It's because I changed how I saw them and how I chose to relate to them. I started doing the same even with circumstances in my life. For example, my job. I had a job that I was working for a while, and if I had any opportunity to talk about my job, the people in my life knew that I couldn't stand this job. It wasn't until I started seeing myself in this job differently that I started showing up to the job differently. Even though I kept the same environment, I worked at the same place with the same people, it was me who decided to change. And when I changed, everything changed. I find myself in a role that's so much more fulfilling, and it's not because I changed jobs. It's because I changed who I was in the job. The person who shows up to the job every day is not the person who first started out in that job years ago. So I say all this to say that when you break the habit of being yourself, you will notice that not only will your circumstances change, but the relationships in your life will change. The opportunities that come your way will change. Everything in your world will be different because you are different. This is why we got to learn how to break the habit of being ourselves. Stay tuned for part 5, where I talk about how your future is hidden in your habits. You got this.